time to bring forward to this microphone and to the final call broadcast this afternoon a very marvelous man, a greatly gifted spiritual teacher and oracle, who had the great vision, as Paul did, on the road to Damascus. And in this great vision, God revealed himself as the Christ. And all over the country, you hear this man articulating the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as the exalted Christ, bringing us all into the Godhead. I bring before you our beloved Minister Louis Farrakhan. Salam alaikum.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the one God to whom all praise is due, the Lord of the worlds, and in the name of his true servant and his last messenger, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, the exalted Christ, I greet you, my beloved brothers and sisters, with the greeting words of peace in the Arabic language. Assalamu alaikum. Once again, it is my great privilege and honor to have this opportunity to share with you some of the words and teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Very quickly, before I get into that which we want to share with you today, two events took place this week which I think our radio audience and those here at the Final Call building should be aware of. One was a press conference held at the Hyatt Regency Hotel by the Hebrew Israelite nation under the direction of Brother Ben Ami, headquartered in Jerusalem. The principal speaker at this great press conference was Prince Asiel Ben Israel. And this press conference was concerning the plight of nearly 3,000 black people from America who are now living in Israel, whom the Israeli government is now planning to deport or possibly to attack. Black leaders came together to say to the Israeli government and the American government that we will not stand by and see our brothers and sisters in Israel molested, attacked, or deported for unjust reasons. It was very interesting that it was one of the largest press conferences in this city. Over 42 members of the press were there. Every network was there, Channel 2, Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 9. Interestingly enough, the next day, or that night, neither Channel 2, nor Channel 5, nor Channel 7 had anything to say about this press conference, which was so well attended. The Sun-Times had nothing to say. The Chicago Tribune had a very little to say. None of the wire services had anything to say. This bears witness to what I have been saying, that the press is controlled by a wicked cabal of evil men and women, many of whom are Jewish, who will not print anything that critiques or criticizes Jewish people for their wickedness or racist behavior against black people. I think the black community should be aware of these things and should take note that the plight of our brothers and sisters in Israel is the same as our plight in the United States of America. And those who wish to inflict pain upon a righteous community there in Israel also fear and hate us in America for the same reason. Our righteousness is a mirror that shows them how far away from the standard of God they are. And rather than look in the mirror of truth and righteousness and change their conduct, they desire to destroy the mirror so that they won't have to be bothered with a criterion to measure their own wickedness against. The second thing I would like to mention is that a young brother by the name of Griffin, who was a member of the Marine Corps, who was an honor guard at the White House and served faithfully in the Marine Corps, was court-martialed this week because he refused. He missed a troop movement which would have put him in combat with possibly his Muslim brothers in Lebanon. He is a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and during the time of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's absence, he joined the Marine Corps. Now, he made a decision, a conscious decision, to miss that troop movement. And he's being court-martialed, which of course he has appealed. Our view is that the court-martial is unjust. For if he, as a Muslim, believes in the teachings of this book, the Holy Quran, this book forbids a Muslim to kill another Muslim. If we kill each other, Allah says in the Quran, He is angry with us and He will prepare for the killer of a Muslim a grievous chastisement. Again, this book, Quran, forbids Muslims to ever be the aggressor. We are only given permission to fight if we are fought against. As long as America is over there in a peacekeeping mission, then he felt a right to be there. But once America is perceived in the role of an aggressor, when the people of Lebanon have not declared any war on America, nor have the Syrians declared any war on America, yet America is bombing Syrians and bombing Lebanese, then that is an aggressive action. Likewise, in Grenada, that was an aggressive action. The people of Grenada have done nothing to the United States of America. Certainly the former government there, Maurice Bishop, had done nothing against the United States government. Therefore, if a Muslim is in the Marine Corps of the United States government, which in my judgment he shouldn't be there in the first place, but if he finds himself there and he has to make a conscious decision as to whether he should obey God or obey man, every Muslim should stand up, no matter what the consequences may be, to obey God. But we find in this society, when we obey God, man becomes angry. Even though in the Pledge of Allegiance, they deceitfully put God first. But they really don't mean God first. For if you will obey God first from the Bible or God first from the Holy Quran, it will bring you into conflict oftentimes with the policies and laws of man. Peter had this problem in the early days of the Christian ministry. He raised the question, shall I obey God or shall I obey man? It is our contention before the world that we shall and we will always obey God first, regardless to what pain it brings to us from man. Obedience to God is a prerequisite for being a righteous person. We put no one above God, and we put no law of man above God's law, nor do we put any flag of any government of man above God's will. Our allegiance is not to America first. Our allegiance is to God first. Our allegiance is not to country first. Our allegiance is to God first. And every Muslim, every righteous person that is within the sound of our voice should make that note mentally, that whenever conscience conflicts with the law of man, we should follow conscience and suffer whatever the consequences are for the glory of God. It is interesting as I conclude this point that in the Nuremberg trials, which took place directly after the Second World War, in which the German High Command were on trial for their lives, America had a great part in that trial, as you will recall. The German High Command said that we are soldiers. And as soldiers, we followed the command of our commanding officers. These commanding officers bid them to engage in the wanton, brutal slaughter of Jewish persons. These commanding officers and laws came down that they should engage in experimentation with Jewish persons or other acts of wickedness. Now, the Nuremberg trials upheld that a soldier should have the right to say to his or her commanding officer, I cannot do this as an act of conscience. Now, when a Muslim stands up and says, I cannot do this as an act of conscience, we want to dismiss him and say that we're not going to recognize his conscience, because a slave should have no conscience but to do the will of the master. And how dare this young black brother stand up and say, I am a free man with a conscience, that I will obey God and take the consequences. So the government punished him for acting as a free man. Think about that. Because the government wants you as a slave to their will, a slave to their policies, policies that black people have no involvement in making, yet we become the instruments of a wicked foreign policy, not to make the world safe for democracy, but to make the world safe for the multinational corporations and big banks which suck the blood of the peoples of the earth. Unless America becomes a righteous nation, we have no right to carry out or become instruments of her foreign policy. If that foreign policy is an unjust and wicked foreign policy, every person in America, white and black, should resist that foreign policy and say, no, I, as a person of conscience, will follow God. And it is only when the people rise up and realize that they are being manipulated by wicked criminals who masquerade as presidents and secretaries of state and men and women of cabinet. It is only then that America will become a land of peace and freedom and justice, and truly the home of the brave and the land of the free. But as long as the masses of the people, 85% of the people, black, brown, red, yellow, and white, are manipulated by 10% who hide from the masses the knowledge of the truth to become bloodsuckers of the poor, then it is incumbent upon the poor, righteous teachers who represent 5% of the population to rise up and condemn the 10% for the freedom of the 85%, the masses of the people. And it is because of this cry coming from the righteous teachers, black and white, who are warning America of the dangerous path that America is treading upon, that I am being attacked and vilified today in the American press. But I warn you in the name of Allah, no person will get away with discrediting the warners of God in the midst of the people today. You have your own white warners telling you day in and day out that America stands at the razor's edge of judgment, and if she will escape the judgment of God, she must change her direction. I am risen up among black people as a warner to this government and a warner to black people. Both people, black and white, are headed into the chastisement of Almighty God unless both make a change of direction. It takes courage to make a change of direction. It takes strength to make change in direction. And this is why I cast my vote for Jesse Jackson, because Mondale Nahad, in my judgment, have the courage to make a change of direction. And if the blind lead the blind, both are going surely to hell. So America, you are headed into the throes. In fact, you're already in the throes of divine judgment. It shall get heavier and heavier upon the heads of state and upon the people of this land. America, you must listen to the voices, the prophetic voices coming up among you. And if you persecute those prophetic voices, if you try to silence them with false charges, if you try to put them into prison and inflict pain upon them, this will only bear witness to the world that you are the same who murdered the prophets of old, and you are no better than your fathers who murdered the prophets of yesterday, for you murder the prophetic voices that rise up to give you direction and correction in this day and time. And so from that point, I move to our subject today, our subject which is taken from the Quran and the Bible, from the 12th chapter of Hebrews, the first verse. And I know that I will not finish this subject in time for the radio broadcast to end, but I'm appealing to all of you who are listening today. If you have the time, come on over to 734 West 79th Street and get this timely subject. The scriptural base for these subject matters are taken from the Bible and Quran. The 12th chapter of Hebrews reads, first verse, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us." The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has said to the black people of America that God has chosen you and me to be the cornerstones of a new world order, as it is written that he would choose the despised and the rejected, the lost sheep. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that we can find no person or persons more fitting this biblical description of the lost sheep than the black people of America and the Western Hemisphere. If we are chosen by God, and we are, to be the cornerstones of a new world order and a new world society, then we who are coming up from the most cruel human bondage must set aside all weights that make us other than our own selves. We must set aside sin, which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is before us. Particular references to those righteous people in the midst of the chosen people who have proclaimed righteousness. And now there are a cloud of witnesses watching our every action. We must cast off these weights, and we must cast off sin, and we must run with patience the race that is set before us. In the Holy Quran, it reads, "And when the earth casts off its burden," when the earth casts off its burden. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us that the earth is 196,940,000 square miles, and it has a weight of 6 sectillion tons, a unit followed by 21 ciphers. That means that the earth's weight is constant. Whatever you take out of the earth and build up on the earth does not change the weight of the earth. When you come up out of the earth and go back to the earth is not reduced when you go back in, nor is the earth increased in weight when you come out. The earth's weight is constant. So what burden is the earth carrying that it must shake off? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has said to us that the weight that the earth is carrying is the weight of an unrighteous world and an unrighteous people that burden the earth, for the earth was created by God to be the home of righteous people. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And the Bible warns, Jesus speaking to the Jews, that God will take the kingdom from whom he pleases, and he will give it to whom he pleases. It pleases God today to interfere with the rule of the wicked and to destroy their power to rule over the people and to turn the earth into the hands of the righteous. And at the head of the righteous is a figure called the Christ. Now, we as human beings carry the weight of sin. And the weight of sin is an oppressive weight on our minds. That weight of sin brings about the death of the human organism, and the weight of sin brings about the death of the spiritual being or spiritual essence of the human being. Sin is a burden that must be cast off. Now, the subject that I want to discuss with you today is a sin that is afflicting the dominant American society, and of course, it is afflicting us, the people of God. And that sin is the sin of child abuse. More specific, the sin of child molestation. Recent studies have shown that child abuse has been and is a very serious problem in the American society. Most of you, as mothers and fathers, are beset with so many problems. The problem of trying to make a living in a world whose economy is quickly weakening. Yet you are bringing children into the world that you have to feed, clothe, and shelter. In the meantime, you are burdened with the problem of a society that is on its way down. Things are falling apart at the governmental level. So things are falling apart economically, politically, and socially. The society is feeling the ravaging weight of a pulling apart. The family, which is the base of all civilized nations, is feeling it hardest of all. And at the root of the family is a mother, or a mother and a father, or a father. But at the root of that family, the weight is tremendous on the parents to make life as pleasant as they possibly can for themselves and their children, because the people lack the knowledge of how to stabilize their own minds. Listen carefully. As the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us, and if you study physics, you know that there are 14 7/10 pounds of atmospheric pressure on every square inch of our bodies. That means that we carry around the weight of the air, the weight of the atmosphere on our bodies. Every square inch of our bodies. And just imagine your hand, and every square inch of it, there is 15 pounds of pressure on that square inch. 15 pounds of pressure on every square inch of your head, your face, your shoulders, your body. You're carrying around an awful lot of weight. Why don't you feel it? The reason you don't feel it is because when you inhale oxygen, which pushes out. You have a pressure within that pushes out equal to the pressure on the outside. So the equalization of the pressure does not allow you to cave in. However, if you were made a vacuum on the inside, if air was taken out of you, then the pressure on the outside would cave you in. Likewise, mentally, when you have knowledge sufficient to meet the demands of the time, then there can be no breakdown mentally for you. Because being in accord with knowledge and having the knowledge to handle the critical time, then you have a force within pushing out equal to the force of the world pushing on you. So you're balanced. Unfortunately, the people do not have the knowledge. When the people do not have a sufficient knowledge that will allow them to walk in a pressure-filled world, then the pressures of the world begin to erode them mentally, spiritually, morally. Do you hear what I'm saying? Now, victims of stress. Everybody is showing stress, hypertension, which is leading to physical strokes. Is that right? Now, when you've got a stressful situation and you come home and the child is crying, and the cry of the child annoys you, personal problems between you and your husband, or if there's no man there at all, personal problems because there is no man, nobody to comfort you, nobody to really talk to you or to share your burdens with. Pretty soon the weight becomes so heavy you find yourself spanking your child, but not spanking your child for what the child has done commensurate with what the child has done. You find yourself taking out your frustrations on your little innocent children. So a man with strong arms will find himself beating a defenseless child, hitting the child sometimes so hard till he knocks his child unconscious or kills his child unwittingly. The pressure is too much for him. He can't find a job in the society. He feels less than a man. He comes home and his wife jumps on him. He doesn't want to beat her up. Sometimes he will just beat her up and then take it out on the children. This kind of crazed society, because the government, I repeat, the government, I repeat, the government is afraid of truth and will not allow truth to get to the masses of the people. The press, the leaders who control it, afraid of truth and will manipulate the minds of people to keep them away from the truth that will give them the knowledge with which they could withstand the pressures of a world that is falling apart. Oh, beloved black brothers and sisters, would that you knew and understand the power of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Oh, if the white people of this nation only understood the power in the majestic message of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you all, by taking that knowledge in, could save America and make her an example of righteousness. But by fighting against the truth, you fight against the very salvation that you need so badly. There is not enough time to adequately deal with this subject matter. It's going to take several lectures. But I want to talk on this child abuse, because child abuse is rampant in this society. Whenever, beloved mothers and beloved fathers, a woman becomes pregnant, because by nature we are attracted to each other and we enjoy the pleasure of sexual relationships. But when pleasure supersedes responsibility, when our minds are so consumed with a lust for pleasure and not a lust for that which will enable us to be responsible for that which pleasure produces, then we will kill the fruit of the womb. The government encourages this. The government encourages slaughtering life, simply because that life that is in the womb is not fully formed. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has said to us, the scholars and scientists agree, and the great religious teachers of this society who are white also agree, that the moment conception takes place, life has begun. And if you kill the newly conceived life, you are murdering life itself. I don't mean to make you feel guilty, but beloved, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us, and it's written in the Holy Quran, that God will bring the lives that you kill back to you in your mind, in your sleep, and they will ask you inside your brain, for what crime did you kill me? Think over that. Killing you, the fruit of your wombs and the answers to your prayers. Once you become a woman and a man so disrespectful of life that you will suck out the new life or use a saline solution which causes the new life to struggle to get air and dies within. Once you do these things, you become unwittingly more cold toward life itself, more warm toward pleasure and irresponsibility, and more cold toward life and its pain and complexities and its responsibilities. You become women and men who do things for the sake of pleasure and not for the sake of that which is right or moral or good. What naturally follows is a system of child abuse, those that got by the abortionist and are here but are unwanted, or are the children of a father that treated you like an animal, made you pregnant and ran out to make somebody else pregnant. And you begin to hate that man, and yet the child comes forward looking just like the man you hate. And sometimes when you think about the man and what he did to you, you just beat up on the child and tell the child, you look like you're no good father. Child abuse is sad and sick, leaving a newborn baby on a doorstep, in a garbage can, in an incinerator, shows, oh, this society is decadent to the core because the people have no regard for life, life in its infancy, life in its conceptual stage. How then can it have any care for life in its advanced years? When the elderly are no longer able to be productive in the society, children want to throw the mothers away, put the fathers away. Oh my, I wish to hell you would just die. I'm sick and tired of taking care of you. But mama wasn't sick and tired of taking care of you when you were young. And maybe daddy was a good daddy, but now he's old and can't see anymore. And you don't have time to lead your blind father around or lead your blind mother around or take care of that one or those ones that took care of you when you were young. You have no regard for life. No wonder your children are being abused. But into that there's a core problem that hurts me to my heart even to think about it, but I must talk about it. And I'm so sorry that those of you who are listening won't hear the end of this subject. But you must get the tape on child abuse. You must call this number and ask for this tape right now. That number is 994-5775. 994-5775. Little girls are being abused by people close to the family. And according to a recent survey, it indicates that 34% of all child molestation is in fact incest. Little girls are being damaged by their own fathers. Little boys are being damaged oftentimes by their own fathers, their own uncles, people close to the family that you have accepted as a close friend. But it is the close friend that has gotten in and is now destroying your children. Oh, brothers and sisters, this is a regrettable subject, but it is one that must be addressed. I never realized how many young black women have been victims of incest. I never knew that the problem was so widespread as it is in the black community and greatly so in the white community. And if you are anywhere in the vicinity, you come right now to 734 West 79th Street. I will finish this subject in 1 hour. So you got time. Come on, and may Allah bless you to get here on time. Thank you for listening. May Allah bless you as I greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum. The most critical aspect of this subject is the molesting of young girls by fathers, by uncles. Brothers and sisters, child molestation is on the increase. Little girls ranging from 6 and 7 months old. Can you believe that? Are being abused. Little girls, a year and a half, 2 years, are being abused. Some little girls, their fathers start making advances toward the child when the child is 5, 6, or 7. And that father begins penetrating this young child, making the child to believe that this is a little secret between a daddy and his daughter, and not to tell mommy. Then putting fear into the child, that the child will not tell the mother. Threatening the child that if the child does, the father will deny it, make the child look as though the child is insane, and put the child away in some kind of home. Can you imagine a father doing these kinds of things to his own child? It's almost unbelievable. But there are so many cases of it, you got to believe it. Most women won't talk about it, so the figures are very inaccurate. They say 1 out of every 4 women. Some say 1 out of every 3. 38% are being molested. Beloved sisters, beloved fathers, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I don't want to hurt your minds, but I want to prick your conscience that perhaps we may save our young girls. What is at the root of this molestation of our children? What is at the root of it? I've tried to analyze it. I have some knowledge, by the grace of God, of its root, but at this time I'm not ready or willing to expose the root. But I want to look at the branches and work down the branches and ultimately get to the root. The effect of child molesting on young girls and boys is such that for the father who engages in such, or the mother who engages in such, the penalty ought to be death. Little girls fall in love with their fathers. The little girl, if you watch her carefully, is a born consoler of the man. She will lay her head on his chest. When she senses he's problemed, she will pat him. She doesn't have to be but a year or so old. You'll see these tendencies coming out of her. She grows up, if there's a man in that house and he's good, she loves him. She adores him. She will do what she thinks will please him. From making his favorite dessert, ironing his shirts, getting up in the morning while the wife is asleep and making his breakfast. The daughter, at a certain age, will even compete with the mother for the father's love and attention. The daughter, if the father comes home late, will get up in the night to see what daddy needs. Fathers, you have to know how to handle that kind of love, admiration, adulation, which borders on worship. You have to know what your role is, and to know that through you and the love that your female children have for you, you are setting a standard by which she will measure the men that come into her life. You are not to tamper with her. You are to take that love that she has for you, feed it, nurture it, help it to grow, and then direct it outward, that she will find a man. And when she finds a man, she will look at him and say, is he like my father? I found somebody, Daddy. Who did you find, honey? Somebody that reminds me of you. Isn't that wonderful? But when a father, unable to handle that admiration and adulation, seeing the wife growing old before his eyes, growing into another kind of beauty, she lacks the firmness in body that she had when you fell in love with her. She lacks the beauty of form that she had when you fell in love with her. But Lord, she produced a daughter that looks just like her. And so sometimes a man, looking past the woman whose love has grown cold for him, who doesn't serve him in the way that she used to serve him, he looks past the wife and sees growing in his daughter the wife again. How blind can you be that you see her as your wife when she was young rather than your daughter? And so the child molester will begin hitting on the child, not showing real love, real affection, but getting a satisfaction personally from squeezing the child, sitting the child on his lap, feeling a sensation from the child sitting in his lap. He begins to become excited and think strange thoughts. Oh, mothers, you're too careless with your children. Mothers, you are too careless with your daughters and your sons. You have your mind set on so many things in the world. You don't focus enough on your children. And some of you that have growing daughters have fallen in love with another man after the first man, the father of your daughters, has left you alone, feeling a biological and a human need. You go out and find a man that loves you, you think, and you love him, but he's looking past you to your budding daughters. You bring him into the house, a man not working. You want a man to take care of him, to spoil him, because you have a sexual need that has overridden your balance as a human being and the protector of your children. So while you are away at work, he is home at play with your daughters, 13 and 14 and 15 years of age. He has a field day there. And when you come home from work, you wonder why he doesn't have a sexual appetite anymore. Because his appetite is being satisfied by your own daughters. And when you find them pregnant one day, and you ask, who is the father? She don't want to tell you that it's your own husband. But sometimes in my own history and experience, the mother already knows. But the mother is too weak and cowardly to confront that man for fear of losing what she never had at all. She looks the other way, like an ostrich with her head buried in the sand, knowing that her own husband is playing with her daughter and playing with her. The daughter sometimes will tell the mother, and the mother will fly in a rage and attack the daughter. Cowardly woman. You don't even deserve the children that you have been blessed to have, because your child, when it cries out, the mother is supposed to listen and stand up and fight for your children. You make excuses for the no good man to hold him around another day, another week, another month, that he may continue to go through your children. Your children then begin to lose respect for your mother, and then they begin to hate you because they cried out but you wouldn't listen. They tried to tell you in their own little way. Children don't want to hurt their mothers, but they give you a signal, but you're too busy looking other directions to look at your children. I don't know how a baby of a year and a half could escape a mother's vision that she's being molested. Mother, who's washing your children? You bring them into the world and let somebody else bathe them. Somebody else change them. But when you change your baby's diapers, you have to look. And as you're washing and cleaning your baby, you have to see. And if you see something there that you shouldn't be seeing, you can't blind yourself. Oh, no, it can't be. Oh, hell, it is. What should your response be? Immediately, your love ceases in that household for the male members until you find the culprit. Immediately, you become the policeman in that house. Immediately, you become the sheriff in that house. I don't give a damn how big and strong a man is. He can't do nothing with a woman when a woman wants to defend her child. A man can't whoop you, sister. Not when your love for your child is inflamed. He can't do nothing with you, woman. You just gotta be a woman to fight for what God has blessed you to come from your womb. That's your responsibility, and you must never, never shirk it for no jive time nigga to lay in a bed with you. little girls who go through this sometimes wish for death. Little girls who go through this, they go to school and they look at the other children and they wonder, are they going through it too? And it builds up a pressure on their brains because they want to tell somebody, but who can they tell? Who will believe their report? So they keep it in themselves and suffer. Oh, before their time. But what's going on? What damage does it do to the little girl's mind? It's a destructive thing, brothers. Most of those who have been sexually abused, according to a study written by Dr. Gary May titled Understanding Sexual Child Abuse, it mentions that at least one psychoanalytic study of children who have been raped indicates that the children, once they become adults, feel a compulsive need to repeat the traumatic sexual act over and over again. This has serious ramifications for the continual cycle of abuse on their own children. Sometimes, if you will study the rapists in the society, it goes all the way back to their own child abuse. And now as they grow up, not being able to shake the traumatic effect of that abuse of their bodies on them, they inflict the same thing on others. Young girls who have grown up maybe in our own families, when their fathers do this to them, brothers, they cannot hardly love a man ever again. All men seem to them as dogs. Most of the prostitutes that are out there tonight selling their bodies are victims of child abuse, child molestation, fathers and uncles, brothers jumping on their sisters, fathers destroying their daughters, and now the daughter feels, since men are such dogs, I might as well make a living at it. And so they don't care anymore. Over and over again, they will repeat the sexual act with no joy and no pleasure. And then many of them become lesbians. They grow to hate men. They can't relate well to men. And so they find compassion and love and tenderness and care in another woman. Little boys being squeezed by fathers and uncles, being laid on, and then introduced to homosexual behavior. A father doing that to his own son, or an uncle doing that to his own son, turning the child out as a baby. The world is messed up. And what we're seeing manifest today in the open is the seeds coming to fruition of what was done in secret places. White people have ever been abusers of their daughters. And there are some societies on this earth that practice this. Black as well as white. Asian as well as European. I want to know what makes this happen. First of all, sisters, men do not have a proper or healthy regard for women. That's number one. Men sick with religious misteaching. Notice how I said it, sisters. Sick with religious misteaching. Put women down. Oh yeah, did you read in the Genesis? Where Adam was all right, honey, until that snake went to talking to that woman. And then that woman went to talking to that man, honey, and caused that poor Adam to eat that fruit. She just deceived Adam. Putting that burden on a woman's mind. Let me tell you something, sister. You ought to cast that foolishness off and never put it on your mind again. Let me tell you something. I don't care how much you want a man. If a man doesn't have the will to engage in what you want, you can't seduce him. He permits it. You can seduce a child, but you can't seduce somebody that's grown. I went to the house. I was selling my newspapers. I knocked on the door and said, "Final call." She said, "Sure is, baby." Just a minute, darling. Just a minute. She runs in the back and puts on one of the see-throughs and comes to the door and opens it just a crack, just enough for you to get a view and want to see more. Are you Mr. Seymour? Hard sell salesman. He puts his foot in the door, and she said, Fling wide the gates. Enter a fool. She didn't seduce you. She showed you what you might have wanted to see. You didn't expect it, but thank God. And there you go, and when you fall, here you come. It was her. She shut up. It's always you. It's always you. She did whatever she wanted to do. If you didn't want that, you could have said no and walked on out the door. So you stop looking at yourself, sister, in some silly role as some temptress. But don't tempt it. No, the weight is not on the woman. God don't charge her with it. God charges the man. Sisters, women have suffered in the world so terribly. So terribly. When a man does not have the proper understanding of the woman, he cannot hold her in the regard and esteem that she should have. When his life is not God-centered, his mind becomes pleasure-oriented. Mind not being God-centered, mind on pleasure, then she becomes the object of what? pleasure. If you don't have a God-centered mind and a proper understanding of God and of yourself and of women, then even God-centered is not enough if it doesn't have proper knowledge and proper understanding. Then you will see women as an object of pleasure. And if a woman is nothing more than an object of pleasure, and you have lost God contact, then your daughters are more pleasure in your house. You understand what I'm saying? Sick, isn't it? Let's go on. It's a little painful, but it's all right. Beloved brothers and sisters, to look at women in a subhuman context is to do to them as you please and have no conscience about it. In the Arab world, prior to the advent of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Arabs were guilty of what is called infanticide. Whenever a girl child was born, they buried the girl child alive. In many ancient societies of Indians and whatnot, young girls, virgin girls, were used as a sacrifice to gods. Never the young men, but the young girls. When a society has no respect for you as a female, then it follows a whole system of abuse will follow women. And it has followed women, brothers. In every age, in every society, among every people, women are abused. It must cease. It must end. And we, who are becoming enlightened, must stop this foolishness right now. And if you're guilty of this kind of behavior, I warn you, don't go back to it ever again. And sisters, if some father is molesting you, you must develop the courage to say no or get the hell out of that house and never go back there again. I warn you, don't give in to it. Resist evil, the scriptures say, and the devil will flee from you. If you resist your father, you could shame that chump. Oh, yes. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us that a woman can give a man a look that will freeze him. She don't even have to talk. So if you don't want to engage in foolishness, you just don't have to, because God has given you so many protective mechanisms. You just have to learn to use them and not be afraid to use them. Now, sisters, it's very serious. Don't you know, in a society, if you will kill your female children, then what will you do to the ones that got by? See? They're nothing. You don't develop their intelligence. I like you, I give you my daughter for favor with you. I just give you my daughter. as though she's a piece of meat. She has no say-so. In the Eastern world, they arrange marriages. In the Western world, nobody comes to your house and asks for your daughter because she ain't in the house. They meet her in the alley and take her. Then when you find out about it as the father, she's pregnant. Hardly ever does a man approach you as a father and say, brother, I would like to marry your daughter. Ain't got that kind of respect for you. So neither the Eastern world nor the Western world should be followed by us. We need to develop a new way. A new way. Now look, beloved brothers and sisters, I don't think I need to dwell on how these societies have affected men's attitudes toward women. In the Islamic world today, under the name of protection, women are mistreated. In some Islamic countries, they won't let a woman get a license to drive a car. In some Islamic countries, they won't fully educate her. In some Islamic countries, she's mistreated. They can't use the Holy Quran as the base of this, though they try. The Quran began to die in the minds of the Islamic people shortly after the companions of the Prophet. And their old traditional way of looking at women began to come up and cloud the way God sees them. So now we need to look at the view of women that will cause us to grow in respect for them and make child abuse no more among us as a people. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad fosters that view. When asked the question, when did woman come into existence? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says she always has been. She always was there. When God created himself, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, coming up out of darkness, he studied himself and found in himself a second self. And from himself, he made a woman. She's a divine creature. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad calls God's emergence out of the black womb of dark space, triple darkness. That womb is called she. So he makes a woman to bear witness to his own self-creation. He gives her a womb. And he makes her to receive life and to develop life in the darkness or the triple darkness of her own womb, to show how he came forth out of darkness. The whole universe is called she. Because the universe revolves around him and his power. And it is a pregnant universe always bringing us new realities. The sun, which gives us life, light, and energy, is called she. Showing man that man must be a respecter of woman, or he's no respecter of God nor himself. When you see a female child, you don't see a source of pleasure. When you see a female child, you see the source of a new world. Not to be abused, but to be respected by a father, to be cherished by a father, to be nurtured, helped by a father. The father should serve as a role model of what a man is for his daughters. The father should be to the daughter what he hopes a husband will be to her in the future. Only the father is not permitted by divine law to go into his daughter, but the husband will. That's a responsibility. Sisters, you have a responsibility. Your responsibility must be to be a watchman of your child. You're on the watch. That's your role. Protect what you brought on the planet. Don't sit your daughters in no man's lap. Period. Don't sit your sons in no man's lap. Hell, get them a chair, sit down. I know what you think, brothers, especially if you're a good person. When I sit my daughter in my lap, ain't nothing funny going on here. Sometimes, brothers, you are good, and the thought never enters your mind. And God has to make a rule, taking into consideration the total society, and we should obey it, not because we need it, but for the weak one in the society that needs it. Do you hear what I'm saying? Naturally, you have a little daughter, you want to hug your daughter. But don't get in the habit of sitting your daughter on your lap. Hold her, hug her, put her down. Let her sit in her mama's lap. Sisters, you got these beautiful girls and boys growing up in a household together. Some of you don't have adequate room, which leads to the breakdown of morals. People need space. God got this planet Earth. It's the third planet from the sun, but it's 96 million miles from the sun. And between us and Mars, look at the millions of miles of distance. So one planet, life and motion does not affect the life and motion of another. People need space. And children, as well as adults, need privacy. Are you listening? Everybody living all up together. Boys and girls living in the same room. Sleeping in the same bed. Oh, they're just brothers and sisters. Yeah. Soon they'll be discovering each other. Yeah, that's true. Little girls should have their own room. Little boys should have their own room. Little boys should have night clothing to wear. Little girls should have night clothing to wear. And especially when they reach puberty, and now children don't have to reach puberty, they start forming. Little girls start developing breasts. Sometimes they'll be 7, 8, 9 years old. Well, you can't let these little girls just walk around any old kind of way. Well, it's just their father. That's the problem. It's just their brother. That's the problem. Cover up today so you won't have to cover up a shameful situation that has taken place in the family. Cover your daughters. Watch, mothers. And if the daughter is too forward around the father, you pull her in the room and tell her, look, sweetheart, ain't nothing like this going on here. You put some clothes on, next time I'll break your butt. Do you understand that? Well, Ma, after all, that's my father. She know better. Put some clothes on that girl. Stop dressing your girls in these filthy styles of the world that incite lust. You mothers, get out of that madness yourself. Grown women still trying to be well, we know we have to grow up and stop trying to showboat and act a fool. When you're a mature woman, be a mature woman. Some of you grandmothers still out here trying to catch a man in unseemly ways. That's not nice. That's not dignified of you. As a woman, you are supposed to grow in dignity and in charm. And when a man falls in love with you, he falls in love with the dignity and the charm of a wise woman whose experience has made her equipped for whatever comes down the pike. She don't have to put on no mini dress. You don't have to put on pants that you can't fit in. Sashaying up, trying to act young. No. Be yourself. Be a good role model. Sisters, if you find that the man is carrying on like this, get rid of him immediately. In fact, before you marry any man when you got daughters, check him carefully. Because you're not bringing him into a house with just you. You're bringing him into the house with your children. Check him thoroughly. Don't give your heart away. Stop a moment and weigh out those children and weigh that man out. And if you bring him in that house, you watch him like a hawk watches a chicken. You hear me? Now, I know this is offensive to some of you, but you shouldn't leave your daughters home with their fathers alone. You're the protector of your daughters. But that's their father. Yeah, I know. I know it's their father. When I heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say this, I was very offended. Because I got 5 beautiful daughters. And the thought of such foolishness never entered my mind. One of my daughters, when the nation fell, and I fell with it, or before it, or under it, came to my house with hot pants on, and I nearly died of stroke. Because I had never seen my daughter's legs since she was 2 years old. Every man should be able to say that. Every woman should protect that young girl to the point where you can preserve her untouched and not messed up mentally, and send her out into the world to be able to cope with that world, but not scarred and ruined by her own father, her uncle, or her brother. You got older brothers sometimes that will attack the younger daughter. You got to watch. We must stamp out this scourge. I need your help, brothers and sisters, to do this. We need your help. Brothers, we need your help. Don't put yourself in that condition, because the time will come in the future when the law of God will be applied on all of us. And it will be terrible to see fathers being killed for destroying their own daughters. Let us cast off these weights. They are heavy weights to carry now. That's a heavy weight. All sin is a heavy weight. Cast it off. We have a cloud of witnesses watching, and let us run the race with patience, knowing that we are not perfect servants of Almighty God, but we should be striving for perfection after the example of that noble one called the Christ. Honorable Elijah Muhammad in our midst taught us well, guided us well, gave us a perfect example. And now we must carry that example into practice. Well, let me end on an upbeat note. I see the spirit of heaviness is over this audience. Well, it's a heavy subject. We can't laugh at it. Sisters and brothers, I can only pray that any sister that has been hurt by her husband, by her father, or an older brother, that the only way you can come through this, you have to be able to see God and see yourself as a person of value, and start casting off the weights that are dragging you down into the pit of hell. Just cast it off. And you must be around people who respect you and honor you and will not take advantage of you. Whatever church you belong to, whatever society you belong to, you must be around women and men of strength that will give you strength to resist this kind of activity. You must do this. You must do this. And God will bless you and make of you the great woman that you're intended to be. We must bring in a better world order, and we're not going to bring it in except through the woman. So, beloved sisters, strengthen yourselves, will you please? Mothers, strengthen yourselves and be watchmen and protectors of that young life. Brothers, strengthen yourselves against this evil. And resolve, if you're a part of that, never to be a part of that again. For we have to take the responsibility of the growing lesbian, homosexual behavior in our community. These are the fruits of seeds harvested in quiet, sedate homes, while mothers and fathers were not watching. Daughters and sons were being molested. May God bless us to make sure that this never happens again. Thank you for listening. I greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.